Tonight, we'll talk about something that's both strange and familiar: the illusion of reality. You experience it every day. You wake up, move through your world, make decisions, feel emotions, and interact with the people and things around you. It all feels very real. But what if it isn't quite what it seems? What if the very nature of your reality is built on illusions, ones your brain creates, your senses reinforce, and your science is just beginning to decode? As you settle in and get comfortable, you can let your body relax and your mind drift gently into curiosity. There's no need to stay fully alert. This is a quiet, thoughtful journey into what makes reality feel real. And tonight, you'll find that maybe, just maybe, it isn't. Let's begin with your senses, those trusted messengers between you and the world: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. They shape your experience of life, but they don't deliver reality itself. They deliver interpretations. Light enters your eyes, sound waves reach your ears, pressure touches your skin. But your brain doesn't receive light or sound or pressure directly. It receives signals, electrical pulses, and it constructs a picture. It fills in blanks, it smooths out inconsistencies, and sometimes it simply makes things up. This is not just poetic, it's measurable. In optical illusions, your brain creates colors and shapes that don't exist. In the blind spot of your vision, your mind invents what should be there. In the phenomenon of change blindness, entire scenes can shift without you noticing. Your brain fills in what it expects, not necessarily what's there. And so the world you experience is already filtered, edited, and reassembled before it even reaches your conscious awareness. But there's more. Let's talk about time. You think of it as a constant, something that ticks forward at a reliable pace. But time, according to physics, isn't so rigid. It bends, it stretches. Under Einstein's theory of relativity, time moves slower for an object in stronger gravity. That's not a theory, it's been observed in GPS satellites. They experience time differently than we do on Earth, and scientists must correct for it constantly. Even your experience of now is not truly immediate. There's a slight delay, milliseconds between when something happens and when you become aware of it. Your brain is always playing catch up. It stitches together a continuous sense of the present from scattered information. It gives you the illusion of a seamless now. Let's move deeper. What about the objects around you? The table, your phone, the ground under your feet. They feel solid, they seem permanent, but at the atomic level, they are anything but. Atoms are mostly empty space. The nucleus, made of protons and neutrons, is tiny. Electrons orbit at a great distance in relation. If an atom were the size of a football stadium, its nucleus would be the size of a pea at the center. The rest is emptiness. And yet everything you touch feels solid because of the electromagnetic forces between particles. Your hand never truly touches the table. It hovers at a distance, repelled by invisible fields. Solidity is a sensation, not a fundamental truth. Still, it feels real. It feels undeniable. But the more we examine reality, the more elusive it becomes. Quantum mechanics, the science of the very small, adds another layer of strangeness. In this realm, particles can exist in multiple states at once. They can be waves and particles simultaneously. They can be entangled, connected across vast distances so that a change in one instantly affects the other, faster than the speed of light. This has been tested. It's not science fiction, it's science fact. Reality, at its deepest level, does not behave like the tidy, mechanical world we were taught in school. Now consider the double slit experiment. If you shine particles like electrons through two slits, they create an interference pattern, as if they were waves. But if you observe them, just the act of watching, They behave like particles again. It's as if the particle knows it's being watched. Observation changes the outcome. But what is observation? What counts as a watcher? These are questions that physicists and philosophers alike have debated for over a century. But the result remains. Reality seems to shift based on the presence of awareness. And you, right now, are aware. That awareness feels like the anchor of your reality. But is even your awareness real in the way you think? Let's turn inward. Your sense of self, your thoughts, your identity, your inner world. It feels consistent. But neuroscience tells us it's a construct. The you think you are is a collection of patterns in the brain. The voice in your head is generated by electrical activity, memories, and feedback loops. And those loops can change. They can be disrupted by injury, trauma, or even altered by meditation. People can lose their sense of self. Others can dissolve it deliberately through spiritual practice. So what then is the real you? A process, a pattern, a perspective. Even memory is unreliable. You might think your memories define your reality, but memories are malleable. They are not stored like files. They are reconstructed each time you recall them. This means your brain edits the past constantly. You might be walking around with memories that never happened, or that happened in ways different than you remember. And yet, they feel real. That's the illusion. Perception is not passive, it is constructed. Every sound you hear, every color you see, every moment you experience, it's filtered through your biology, your expectations, your beliefs. Reality is not something you receive, it's something your brain builds for you. And that means two people can experience the same event very differently, because each is constructing their version of the world. This isn't just philosophy, it's supported by studies in psychology and neuroscience. The brain uses prior experience to predict what will happen next. These predictions shape what you perceive. That's why illusions work. That's why people see what they expect. It's called predictive coding, and it's one of the major theories in cognitive science today. Your brain is not just reacting, it's guessing. So when you ask, what is real? The answer becomes slippery. Is it what your senses report? Is it what your brain constructs? Is it what physics describes? Or is it something else entirely? Something unknowable, always just out of reach? As we move through this journey together, we'll explore each of these layers in more detail. We'll look at perception, time, space, matter, consciousness, and the strange science that connects them all. You don't have to come to any conclusions tonight. Just allow your mind to soften around the possibility that reality might not be what it seems. You can let go of needing everything to make perfect sense. Just float in the space between science and wonder. Let your curiosity guide you. Let the idea of illusion expand in your thoughts like ripples in still water. And as you rest, know that you are part of a reality that is still unfolding, still being discovered, still mysterious. Not just out there, but within you. Let's begin this part of the journey by diving deeper into how your brain constructs your personal experience of reality, and why that experience, though vivid and compelling, can never show you the full picture. Think of your brain as a prediction machine. It's constantly using your past experiences to guess what's happening now. This isn't a flaw, it's a survival feature. The world is complex and full of noise. If your brain had to process everything from scratch in every moment, it would be overwhelmed. Instead, it fills in the gaps using memory, patterns, and expectation. But the side effect of this process is that what you perceive as reality is not always accurate. It's a best guess. This is especially clear when we look at how the brain handles vision. Vision feels immediate and complete. You look around a room and see everything clearly, instantly. But that's not what's actually happening. Your eyes take in fragmented data. The resolution is highest in the very center of your gaze, what's called the fovea. Everything else is blurry, peripheral, low detail. Your brain takes this fragmented input, along with previous knowledge of what should be there, and constructs a coherent scene. You think you see everything, but you're seeing a detailed illusion built from partial data. This isn't just a metaphor, it's measurable. Experiments in visual neuroscience have shown that your perception of space, color, and motion can all be manipulated by context, expectation, and even language. In one study, researchers showed participants two nearly identical shades of color. When the colors were given different names, the brain reacted as if they were more distinct than they actually were. Language reshaped perception. Let's go further. Auditory perception is also an illusion. The sounds you hear aren't raw vibrations. They're filtered and interpreted by the brain. You don't just hear tones, you hear meaning. You hear words, music, emotions. And your brain will fill in missing sounds if it expects them. There's a phenomenon called the phonemic restoration effect. If a sound is missing from a spoken word, say, replaced by static, your brain often fills it in automatically. You don't notice the gap. The illusion of completeness is preserved. Smell and taste are even more suggestible. The same glass of wine can taste expensive or cheap, depending on what label you think it has. People report richer flavor when they believe they're drinking a $90 bottle versus a $10 one. Even if it's the same wine, your senses are not just input channels. They are shaped by context, belief, and suggestion. Touch, too, can deceive. Phantom limb syndrome is a famous example. People who've lost a limb often feel pain or sensation in the limb that's no longer there. The sensation is real to them, but it's an illusion created by the brain, which hasn't updated its internal map of the body. Even the sense of your body's position in space, called proprioception, is vulnerable to manipulation. In the rubber hand illusion, when a fake hand is stroked in sync with a hidden real hand, people begin to feel that the fake hand is part of their body. Their sense of self extends into an object that isn't even alive. Why does this matter? Because it means that what you think of as you, your body, your self-image, your sense of place in the world, is also constructed. Your brain holds a model of your body, and it updates that model constantly based on sensory input. But when that input is altered, the model can be fooled. You are not directly experiencing reality. You are experiencing the brain's version of it. This idea has deep implications. It suggests that there is no absolute here, only your brain's interpretation of it. And if perception is interpretation, then different people will interpret the same moment in very different ways. This is not just psychology, it's neuroscience. And it explains why arguments over facts can be so frustrating. People aren't necessarily being stubborn or dishonest. They may genuinely experience the world differently. Now let's touch on attention. Attention is the spotlight of your awareness. It determines what gets processed and what gets ignored. But attention is limited. At any moment, you're only truly aware of a fraction of what's around you. In experiments like the famous invisible gorilla test, people are asked to watch a video and count how many times players pass a basketball. During the video, a person in a gorilla suit walks through the scene. Half of the viewers don't notice the gorilla at all. Their attention was elsewhere. The gorilla wasn't invisible, it was ignored. This demonstrates a powerful truth. What you focus on defines your reality. What you miss may as well not exist. Let's pause here and reflect. If your senses are filtered, your memories are reconstructed, and your attention is limited, then what is reality really? What can you trust? It turns out that the only reality you can fully access is your conscious experience of the moment. But even that is shaped by processes you can't see or control. It's like living in a theatre where the stage is built just a second before you step onto it. The lights turn on, the props are set, and the scene is revealed just in time. But backstage, there's an entire production going on, one you never see. That backstage is your brain, and the show is your reality. Let's now explore another dimension: time. You may think of time as a line moving from past to future, with the present as a moving dot. But that model is a mental construct. In physics, time does not always behave so neatly. Einstein's theory of relativity showed that time can pass at different rates, depending on your speed and gravitational field. In a strong gravitational field, time slows down. This is not an abstraction, it's real and measurable. Astronauts on the International Space Station age slightly slower than people on Earth. But it gets stranger. The equations that govern physics at the deepest levels don't require a direction of time. They work equally well forward and backward. Time, as we perceive it, with a clear past, present, and future, is a feature of our consciousness, not of the universe itself. Entropy, the tendency of systems to become more disordered, is what gives us the illusion of time's arrow. But that illusion breaks down at quantum scales. You might ask, if time isn't fundamental, then what is? Some physicists believe that time is emergent, a byproduct of more basic processes. Others propose that what we call now is just a slice of a larger timeless reality. In the block universe theory, all moments, past, present, and future, exist simultaneously, like frames of a film strip. You move through them, but they are all equally real. This challenges the everyday experience of change, decision, and progression. But even the idea of movement may be an illusion. You may not be moving through time at all. Time might be a landscape you perceive in sequence because that's how your mind organizes information. In this view, memory gives the illusion of a past. Anticipation gives the illusion of a future. But in the deepest sense, everything just is. And still, you feel the passage of time. You watch clocks, you grow older, you remember yesterday. That experience is real to you, but it might not be an accurate reflection of the universe. So what does all of this mean? It means that reality is not just something out there, it's something in here, constructed by your brain, shaped by your senses, filtered by your attention, and organized by your mind. The outer world and your inner experience are always in dialogue, and the line between them is not as clear as it seems. In the next part, we'll explore how physics, especially quantum theory, reveals even deeper illusions about the fabric of reality. From particles that aren't really particles, to space that might not be empty, we'll continue peeling back the layers. In this part of our journey, let's step away from your personal perception and move into the external world, or what we usually think of as the real world. But as you'll soon see, even this world, composed of space, matter, and energy, is far stranger and more illusory than it appears. Let's begin with matter. Everything you've ever seen or touched is made of atoms. Atoms are the building blocks of matter. That part's straightforward. But what are atoms really? If you picture them as tiny solid balls, you're imagining a model from the early 20th century. That model has long since been replaced by something far less intuitive. Atoms are mostly empty space. A hydrogen atom, for example, consists of a single proton in the center and a single electron somewhere in a cloud around it. But that cloud isn't like a planet orbiting a sun. It's a probability field. The electron isn't in one specific place until it's measured. Instead, it exists in a spread of possibilities, like a fog. The location of the electron is a question with no definite answer until someone looks. And once someone looks, the wave of probability collapses into a specific result. So what does that mean? It means the solidity of matter, the feeling that your desk, your body, and the world around you are made of firm, tangible stuff, is a trick of forces. It's not that atoms are solid, they're not. They're energy fields with interactions. The reason you can't put your hand through a table isn't because of hard surfaces pushing against each other. It's because of the electromagnetic forces between electrons in your hand and electrons in the table. Those forces repel each other. What you feel as solidity is actually resistance between energy fields. Now let's go deeper. Inside the atom are even smaller particles, protons and neutrons in the nucleus. These are made of quarks held together by gluons. And here, at this subatomic level, matter starts to lose all its classical definition. Particles don't have size or shape in the normal sense. They are excitations in quantum fields. Think of the universe as a collection of invisible fields stretching through all of space. A particle is not a tiny object sitting in space, it's a ripple, a localized vibration in one of those fields. The quantum field is always present, even in what we call empty space. So the vacuum isn't empty, it's teeming with activity, virtual particles popping in and out of existence, fields fluctuating. In fact, most of the mass of a proton doesn't come from the quarks inside it. It comes from the energy of the gluons and the movement of the quarks. Energy has mass, and mass is not a measure of stuff, it's a measure of energy bound in a particular way. So what is stuff then? It's not atoms, it's not particles, it's patterns of energy, structures within fields, and those structures are not static, they're in constant motion. Even the particles that make up your body are constantly changing. The atoms in your skin were once in stars. The atoms in your lungs were once in trees. You are not a fixed object, you are a process, a flow of matter and energy that temporarily holds a shape, like a whirlpool in a river. But that shape, your body, your mind, your identity, feels persistent. You wake up each day as you. You have a name, a memory, a sense of continuity. And yet everything that gives rise to that continuity is in flux. Your cells are dying and regenerating. Your memories are evolving. Your thoughts shift moment to moment. There is no single you frozen in time. There is only the ongoing activity of being you. And this leads us to a difficult question. If matter is not solid and self is not fixed, then what exactly is real? Some scientists believe that reality itself is relational. In quantum mechanics, properties of particles often depend on how they're measured, and by what. In this view, things don't have intrinsic properties. They only have relationships. The spin of a particle isn't a fixed feature. It depends on how it's observed. The position of a particle isn't absolute. It's relative to the measuring system. And that means that what we think of as real is, in many cases, determined by context. Now let's return to the double-slit experiment for a moment. It's one of the clearest examples of how observation can change reality. When you send a stream of electrons through two slits, they form an interference pattern on the screen behind, suggesting wave behavior. But when you place a detector to observe which slit the electrons pass through, the interference pattern disappears. Now they behave like particles. The act of measurement collapses the wave function, a mathematical description of all possible outcomes, into a single outcome. So what's doing the collapsing? No one knows for sure. Some interpretations say it's the observer's knowledge that causes the collapse. Others say it's the physical interaction with the measuring device. Still others propose that all outcomes happen in parallel universes, and you only experience the one you observe. These are not fringe theories, they are serious interpretations within quantum physics, and they all challenge the notion that there's one objective reality independent of observation. This doesn't mean that nothing is real. It means that reality is not as fixed and solid as we once believed. Even space itself is not empty or passive. Einstein's theory of general relativity showed that space is a dynamic fabric. It curves in the presence of mass and energy. That curvature is what we call gravity. The Earth orbits the Sun not because the Sun is pulling it with a force, but because the Sun warps space-time. and the Earth is following a curved path through that warped space. This changes our understanding of motion, force, and even time. And now, with discoveries like dark energy and dark matter, we realize that most of the universe is made of something we cannot see, detect, or explain. The matter you interact with, the stars, the planets, your body, makes up only about 5% of the total energy content of the universe. The rest is invisible and mysterious. So when you look at the stars, or walk through your day, or feel the ground beneath your feet, you are interacting with a sliver of what's actually there. Your senses are tuned to a narrow band of reality. You can't see infrared or ultraviolet. You can't hear frequencies outside a certain range. You can't detect magnetic fields or radiation with your body. You live inside a filtered reality, not just mentally, but physically. Your nervous system evolved to give you just enough information to survive, not to understand everything, not to perceive the full truth, just to keep you safe, moving, and functional in a narrow range of environmental conditions. This means that much of reality is beyond your perception, not because it isn't there, but because your biology wasn't built to see it. And now we come full circle. You experience a world of solid objects, flowing time, personal identity, and objective facts. But behind all of that is a world of uncertainty, probability, energy, and flux. The deeper we look, the more the concept of reality becomes elusive. It's not that nothing is real, it's that what's real is more complex, more subtle, and more mysterious than it appears. Now that we've examined how your brain interprets sensory input and how the fabric of matter and time bends under observation, let's turn inward, to the psychology of belief and how meaning is assigned to the chaos. Reality isn't just about what you see or measure, it's about how you understand what you see, and your understanding is deeply shaped by belief. Those quiet, often unconscious assumptions that form the structure of your internal world. They color your perception, guide your decisions, and create a framework through which everything is interpreted. But where do beliefs come from? They're built over time, shaped by experience, culture, language, and repetition. Some beliefs are taught, others are absorbed. Still others seem to arise from within. But regardless of where they come from, they function as a kind of lens. Through them, you don't just perceive the world, you construct it. This is where illusion becomes essential. Imagine two people standing in the same room. The physical space is identical, but what they see and feel can be drastically different. One might feel calm and safe. The other might feel anxious and threatened. The difference lies not in the external reality, but in their internal narratives. Each person carries a mental model of what the world means. That model determines what stands out, what feels dangerous, what feels important. Psychologists call this a schema, a mental framework that organizes information. Your brain uses schemas to process the overwhelming flood of data it receives every moment. Without them, you'd be paralyzed by choice, unable to distinguish the relevant from the irrelevant. But schemas can also trap you. They can make you ignore evidence that doesn't fit. They can reinforce false patterns. They can turn assumptions into certainties. And this is where your sense of reality becomes deeply personal. If you believe that the world is dangerous, you will notice threats. If you believe that people are kind, you will notice kindness. If you believe that you are capable, you will interpret obstacles as challenges. If you believe you are helpless, you will interpret them as walls. In each case, the external situation might be the same, but your internal reality shapes what you experience. There's a term for this in neuroscience: confirmation bias. It refers to your brain's tendency to seek out, interpret, and remember information that confirms what you already believe. This isn't a flaw, it's an efficiency. If your brain had to reevaluate every belief constantly, it would use too much energy. So instead, it builds stories and sticks to them. But stories, like illusions, are not always accurate. Consider how memory works. It's easy to think of memory as a recording device, a mental video camera that stores events as they happened. But that's not how the brain works. Memory is constructive. Each time you recall something, your brain reassembles it from fragments. It fills in gaps with best guesses. And each time you recall it, the memory changes slightly, reinforcing certain parts, discarding others. Over time, your memories evolve, and yet they feel real. This means that your memories, the foundation of your personal narrative, are not fixed. They are rewritten with each retelling. The past you rely on to define yourself is not a static archive, but a dynamic illusion. And yet it shapes your identity, your choices, and your sense of what is true. This brings us to the idea of narrative self. You likely think of yourself as a consistent person with a core identity. But from a neuroscience perspective, there is no central self in the brain. There is no single structure or region that houses you. Instead, there are networks, clusters of activity that light up when you think about yourself, make decisions, or reflect on your past. These networks are not fixed. They change with mood, experience, and context. Your sense of self is a narrative, a story you tell yourself about who you are, where you've been, and where you're going. This narrative is stitched together from memory, belief, emotion, and expectation. And like any story, it can be revised. You can change the plot, you can reinterpret the past, you can shift the meaning of your experiences, and when you do, your perception of reality shifts too. This isn't just philosophy, it's used in therapy. In cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, people are taught to recognize and challenge distorted beliefs. If you believe you're a failure, you will interpret every setback as proof. But if you question that belief, if you change the narrative, you can begin to see the same events differently. The facts may remain, but the meaning changes. And meaning is what shapes reality. Even the concept of truth is more flexible than you might expect. In science, truth is provisional. It's based on the best available evidence, but always open to revision. What we believed about the universe 100 years ago has been radically transformed by new data. That's not failure, it's progress. But in everyday life, people often treat beliefs as fixed truths. They defend them, protect them, and build identities around them. This creates conflict, not because of facts, but because of meaning. And meaning, as you now understand, is an illusion layered onto experience. Let's consider one more powerful example: the placebo effect. In medicine, a placebo is an inactive substance, a sugar pill, for example, that produces real changes in the body simply because the person believes it will help. Placebo effects can reduce pain, improve mood, and even change measurable biological markers. This is not imagination, it's biology responding to belief. The expectation of healing triggers the brain's own systems for relief. This shows just how tightly reality and belief are intertwined. What you expect can become what you experience. But the reverse is also true. Nocebo effects, where negative expectations produce harmful outcomes, are equally real. If you believe something will hurt you, your body may react as if it has, even in the absence of harm. This highlights a profound truth. The boundary between mind and body, between belief and biology, is porous. So when we speak of the illusion of reality, we're not saying that everything is false. We're saying that what you experience as real is always filtered through belief, expectation, and interpretation. And these filters are not fixed, they can change. This realization can be freeing. It means that your reality is not set in stone. It can be reshaped. You can choose different narratives. You can challenge limiting beliefs. You can update the story you live by. And as you do, the world around you, what you notice, what you feel, what you expect, begins to change too. We've talked about the senses, perception, memory, belief, and the physical structure of the universe. But now, we turn toward the deepest and perhaps most mysterious layer of all: consciousness. Consciousness is the undeniable feeling of being aware, of having thoughts, sensations, emotions, memories. You are not just a body, you are aware of your body. You are not just a brain, you are aware of your thoughts. This awareness is so fundamental to your experience that it's easy to overlook. But from a scientific point of view, it remains one of the most difficult things to explain. It's often called the hard problem of consciousness. Here's why it's so hard. The brain is made of physical matter: neurons firing, chemicals flowing, electrical activity buzzing through networks. That's the observable part. But how does any of that lead to subjective experience? Why should the firing of neurons produce the feeling of pain, the color red, the sound of a violin, or the taste of chocolate? You can map which parts of the brain are active during certain experiences, but that doesn't explain why those experiences are felt at all. You could look at every cell in the brain and still not find a single trace of consciousness itself. Because consciousness isn't a thing, it's an experience. This creates a puzzle. On one hand, everything we know about the world comes through consciousness. Without it, there would be no thoughts, no science, no language, no observation. On the other hand, we don't know where it comes from. We can't measure it directly. We only infer it from behavior, brain scans, and self-reports. In fact, the only consciousness you can know for sure is your own. Everything else is assumed. Let's break this down. From the standard scientific view, consciousness is an emergent property of the brain. Just as wetness emerges from water molecules interacting, consciousness emerges from complex networks of neurons. When enough neurons communicate in a certain way, experience arises. According to this view, when the brain is damaged, consciousness fades. When the brain stops functioning, consciousness ends. But not everyone agrees with this view. Some theories propose that consciousness is not a product of the brain, it's a fundamental property of the universe. Just like mass or charge or spin, consciousness might be baked into the fabric of reality itself. This idea is called panpsychism. It suggests that even elementary particles might have some form of proto-consciousness. Not human-like, not complex, but a glimmer of awareness. To be clear, this doesn't mean your toaster has thoughts. It means that what we experience as consciousness might not be exclusive to humans or brains. It might be a basic aspect of existence that becomes more complex as systems become more organized. Other theories propose that consciousness arises from information. The integrated information theory says that any system that processes information in a complex, interconnected way may possess some level of awareness. The more integrated and differentiated the information, the more conscious the system. This idea allows for a scale of consciousness, from simple in basic organisms to rich and complex in humans. And still others suggest that consciousness isn't something the brain produces, it's something the brain receives. This is more philosophical, but it aligns with ancient traditions and some interpretations of quantum mechanics. In this view, consciousness is like a field, and the brain is a kind of receiver or filter. Damage the receiver and the signal is distorted, but the signal itself still exists. No matter which theory you consider, one thing becomes clear. Consciousness complicates the idea of an objective, external reality. Why? Because your reality is always experienced through consciousness. You can never step outside of it. You can't observe the universe without being aware. And if consciousness itself is not fully understood, then your experience of reality can never be fully trusted as objective. In philosophy, this leads to something called idealism, the view that consciousness is not in the universe, but that the universe is in consciousness. In other words, the material world may arise from mind, not the other way around. This sounds radical, but it's not without precedent. In dreams, you experience entire worlds, sights, sounds, places, people, all without physical input. Your mind creates a world that feels real. You react emotionally, you think, you move, and then you wake up and it vanishes. This shows that your brain can simulate reality so convincingly that you don't know it's a simulation. So what if waking life is also a kind of simulation, just a more stable one, grounded in shared experiences and rules? This brings us to the concept of simulation theory. Popularized by thinkers like Nick Bostrom, this idea proposes that advanced civilizations might create simulated realities, and if they did, those simulations could outnumber real physical worlds. If that's true, statistically speaking, we might already be inside one. In this view, your reality, what you see, touch, feel, could be the result of code running on some cosmic computer. There is no direct evidence for this, but it can't be ruled out either. Some physicists have pointed out that the universe appears to be quantized, pixelated at the smallest scales, just like digital systems. Others note strange mathematical patterns in physical laws, suggesting underlying code. While far from proven, these ideas remind us just how much of reality remains unexplained. But you don't need to invoke simulations to question the solidity of the world. Your entire experience, colors, sounds, objects, time, is assembled in your mind. That's a fact. And if the mind can be fooled, then so can reality. Consider altered states of consciousness, whether through meditation, sensory deprivation, trauma, or substances. In these states, people often report profound changes in how they perceive the world. Time may slow down or disappear. The self may dissolve. Boundaries between things may blur. Some even report a sense of unity with the universe or a feeling of waking up from a dream. These are not fringe experiences. They are well documented in neuroscience and psychology, and they demonstrate that consciousness is not fixed. It can expand, contract, fragment, or merge. And as consciousness shifts, so does reality. So what can we say with confidence about the nature of consciousness? Not much. It is the foundation of your experience, yet its origin is mysterious. It is shaped by the brain, yet not fully explained by it. It may be a byproduct, or it may be the basis of everything. But one thing is certain: reality is not separate from awareness. Without consciousness, there is no experience of anything, and with it, illusion becomes indistinguishable from truth. In the next part, we'll examine how culture, language, and society further construct your sense of reality. From symbols to stories to shared illusions, we'll look at how collective belief creates the world you think you live in. Let's now expand our view even further. We've looked at how individuals construct reality through perception, belief, and consciousness. But no one exists in a vacuum. You were born into a world already shaped by language, culture, and society. These systems define the boundaries of what you consider real, often before you ever have a chance to question them. Let's begin with language. Language is one of the most powerful tools your mind uses to categorize and understand experience. It shapes how you see the world, not just how you describe it, but how you perceive it. Words create distinctions. They tell you what things are, how they relate, and what they mean. Without language, your thoughts would be much harder to organize. But language doesn't just describe reality, it constructs it. Different languages divide the world in different ways. In some languages, like Hopi, time is not described in terms of past, present, and future, as rigid categories. Instead, events are described based on whether they are manifest or unmanifest, experienced or yet to be. This changes how speakers relate to time itself. In other languages, there are multiple words for what English simply calls snow. Each variation represents a different quality. Wet snow, packed snow, powder snow. This shapes attention, memory, and even how people move through their environments. The famous Sapir-Whorf hypothesis suggests that the structure of a language influences its speaker's worldview. This doesn't mean that language limits thought, but that it guides it. It highlights some patterns while hiding others. It channels your attention towards certain relationships, categories, and meanings, often without your awareness. And this is important, because once a meaning becomes embedded in language, it becomes part of your mental map of reality. Now think about symbols. Symbols are shortcuts for meaning. A red octagon means stop. A wedding ring means commitment. A cross means faith. None of these objects have inherent meaning. Their meaning is assigned by culture, and yet they have real emotional and behavioral effects. You stop at the sign, you feel comfort from the ring, you feel reverence in a sacred space. The symbol becomes reality through shared agreement. Culture is made of such agreements. It tells you what to value, what to ignore, what is normal, what is deviant. It sets the parameters of acceptable thought. It defines success and failure. It determines beauty, truth, and even what qualifies as real. These definitions differ across cultures, but within a culture, they're so deeply embedded that they often go unquestioned. You learn these norms without realizing it. As a child, you absorb them through stories, school, media, family, and daily interactions. They become part of your identity. They shape your goals, and because they are shared, they reinforce one another. If everyone around you believes the same thing, it feels true. It feels like reality. But that feeling is the result of social consensus, not necessarily objective truth. This is where shared illusions come into play. Take money, for example. A piece of paper or a number in a digital account has no inherent value. Its power comes from belief, your belief, and everyone else's. The entire global economy is a shared agreement. As long as everyone accepts the illusion, it functions. But if that belief were to collapse, the system would collapse too. Reality, in this case, depends entirely on collective trust in a symbol. Another example is timekeeping. There is nothing inherently natural about 7-day weeks, 12-month years, or 24-hour days. These are constructs, agreed upon systems that help us organize experience. They become real only through repetition and belief. You set your alarm, follow schedules, and plan your life around them, but you're operating inside a grid laid down by culture. It feels real, but it was invented. The same goes for concepts like nationhood, race, gender roles, success, and even identity. These are not natural categories. They are social categories, constructed and reinforced by language, history, power structures, and tradition. They can be useful. They can also be limiting, but their reality depends on how widely they are accepted. This doesn't mean these constructs aren't impactful. On the contrary, they shape lives, laws, and entire civilizations. But the point is that they are not real, in the same way that gravity or light is real. They are human-made realities, illusory in the sense that they're constructed, not discovered. You live inside these collective illusions every day. You participate in rituals, birthdays, weddings, holidays that carry emotional weight not because of physics, but because of meaning. You follow etiquette and unspoken rules. You assign value to careers, objects, and status symbols. And often you forget that all of it is optional, that these meanings are not inherent in the world, but added to it, layered on top of physical reality like a filter. This is especially clear in media. The images, stories, and messages you consume shape what you think is normal, desirable, dangerous, or exciting. A person who watches news filled with violence may come to see the world as unsafe, even if their own environment is peaceful. A person who scrolls through curated social media may feel inadequate, even though the images they see are not representative of real life. The illusion becomes internalized. This is the power of narrative. Human beings are storytelling creatures. You understand your life through stories. Where you've been, where you're going, what matters. These stories are influenced by the larger stories of your culture. What counts as a good life? What success looks like? What makes a person valuable? These narratives are not neutral. They reflect deeper assumptions, ideologies, and worldviews. And because they are shared, they feel stable, but they can be rewritten. When enough people challenge a cultural illusion, it begins to shift. This is how revolutions begin: cultural, scientific, or social. A new story emerges, one that redefines what's real, what's acceptable, and what's possible. But until that happens, the existing illusions remain dominant. This raises a powerful question: how many of your thoughts, goals, and beliefs are truly yours? And how many were handed to you by the society you live in? It's not always easy to tell, but by asking the question, you begin to reclaim agency. You begin to see that reality is not only built from the inside out, but also from the outside in. The illusion of reality is not just sensory, it's structural, it's linguistic, it's cultural. It surrounds you like the air you breathe, so familiar that you forget it's there. As we move into the modern world, the illusion of reality doesn't just persist, it accelerates. Because now, more than ever, we are creating alternate layers of experience through the power of technology. We are not merely perceiving filtered reality through our senses. We are now designing and inhabiting fully constructed digital realities. Let's start with something you use every day: screens. You wake up and check your phone. The glowing rectangle in your hand connects you to an endless stream of information: images, stories, opinions, updates, news, entertainment. But what you see on that screen is not reality. It's a curated simulation of reality, carefully shaped by algorithms, design choices, and the preferences of billions of people trying to capture your attention. What you see is not the world as it is. It's the world as it's selected for you. This selection is not random. Every platform you use learns your behavior, what you click on, how long you pause, what you share, and then reshapes what you're shown. Over time, this creates what's often called a filter bubble, a version of reality that confirms your views, reinforces your habits, and quietly narrows your perspective. You may believe you're seeing a wide range of content, but in truth, you're seeing a highly personalized illusion. And the more you interact with it, the more it adapts to reflect you back to yourself. It feels informative, it feels true, but it's only one sliver of a much broader reality. Now think about virtual reality. With VR headsets, we can immerse ourselves in completely artificial environments. You can walk through ancient ruins, fly through space, or stand on stage in front of a roaring crowd, all from your living room. Your senses are engaged: vision, sound, even touch if haptic devices are used. And while your logical mind may know it's not real, your body reacts as if it is. Your heart races, your breath quickens, your nervous system responds. This shows just how flexible the brain is. It doesn't care whether stimuli come from the outside world or a synthetic simulation. If the signals match expected patterns, the illusion becomes experience. And as VR technology improves, that line will continue to blur. Already, people report feeling fully present in virtual environments, so present that returning to the physical world feels disorienting. But it doesn't stop there. Augmented reality overlays digital elements onto the physical world. You can point your phone at a street and see restaurant ratings hovering in the air. You can wear glasses that project virtual screens, guides, or creatures into your field of view. In these environments, reality is not replaced. It's layered. And in time, these layers may become indistinguishable from the base world beneath them. Now consider deep fakes. Artificial intelligence can now generate hyper-realistic images, voices, and videos of people saying and doing things they never actually did. With enough data, a person's face can be mapped and manipulated. Their voice can be cloned. Their movements can be simulated. The result? A video that looks and sounds authentic, but is entirely fake. This has profound implications for how we determine what's real. A century ago, a photograph was considered proof. Then came Photoshop. Then came CGI. Now, even video and audio, once considered untouchable sources of truth, can be fabricated with startling accuracy. The illusion is no longer in your perception. It's embedded in the media itself. And artificial intelligence is accelerating this even further. AI can write human-sounding articles, generate artwork, compose music, and hold conversations. As these systems improve, they will become indistinguishable from human creators. Already, people form emotional bonds with AI companions, use AI therapists, and rely on AI for advice, entertainment, and interaction. This introduces a new layer to the illusion of reality, emotional illusion. You can feel connection, comfort, even love toward a non-conscious system. Your emotions don't care that the interaction isn't mutual. If your brain registers the right signals, tone of voice, choice of words, facial expressions, it responds with authentic emotional states. The illusion becomes real because you are real. The implications are enormous. It means you can live inside a bubble of custom-designed reality. Your information, your entertainment, your relationships, shaped by algorithms and artificial systems that adapt to your preferences. And unless you actively step outside of that design, you may never notice how much of your reality is synthetic. This is not science fiction. It's already happening. People now spend more time online than in the physical world. They form communities, make decisions, and build identities in digital spaces. And those spaces are governed not by natural laws, but by code. Programmable rules that can be changed at any time. The physics of a virtual world can shift with a software update. The boundaries of identity, status, and even time can be redefined. You live in a world where the raw materials of reality, perception, emotion, identity, can be simulated. And in many cases, these simulations feel more vivid, more engaging, and more controllable than physical life. Why struggle with a difficult conversation in person when you can talk to a version of someone in virtual space? Why walk through a rainy city when you can teleport through a sunlit digital landscape? These are not just escapes. They are choices. And every time you choose the simulated over the physical, the boundary between them fades. But here's the key point. These illusions are not necessarily bad. Simulation is not deception. It's a tool, a reflection of human creativity. But when you forget that you're inside a designed environment, when you treat illusion as unfiltered truth, that's when reality becomes fragile. It's not just about technology, it's about awareness. Knowing that your attention is being guided, knowing that your emotions are being activated by code, knowing that your memories, perceptions, and preferences can be shaped by invisible systems. That knowledge doesn't make the illusion vanish, but it helps you see it for what it is. And in that awareness, you reclaim choice. You can step back, you can question, you can decide what to trust, what to feel, what to follow. Reality becomes something you co-create, not something that is passively delivered to you. Now we arrive at one of the most fascinating intimate, and often overlooked aspects of the illusion of reality. The realms of dreams, imagination, and altered states of consciousness. Each night, when you fall asleep, your brain begins an extraordinary process. Without your conscious intent, it generates entire worlds. You see places you've never visited. You have conversations with people who may or may not exist. You feel emotions, joy, fear, sorrow, awe, as if they were happening in waking life. In that moment, everything feels real. You don't question the laws of physics or the strangeness of events because your dreaming mind accepts the experience fully. But when you wake up, it all dissolves. You realize none of it was real. It was a dream. And here's the crucial question. If a dream can feel completely real while you're in it, how do you know you're not dreaming now? That question has haunted philosophers for centuries. From Descartes to Chuang Tzu to modern cognitive scientists, the line between dreaming and waking has remained mysterious. Because, after all, in both states, your brain is constructing a model of the world. Whether that input comes from the senses or from internal memory, it feels authentic when you're inside it. Lucid dreaming offers a strange glimpse into this idea. In a lucid dream, you become aware that you are dreaming while the dream is still happening. This awareness allows you to shape the dream, fly, change the scenery, interact with characters in new ways. And yet, the dream world doesn't collapse. It persists. The illusion remains stable, even as you become conscious within it. That's the astonishing part. Your mind can sustain a vivid reality while knowing it's not real. Now let's turn to imagination. Imagination is often dismissed as fiction, fantasy, or play, but it is, in fact, one of the most powerful forces shaping your reality. Every invention, every building, every scientific breakthrough began in someone's imagination. Your goals, your fears, your understanding of other people, these are constructed from imagined scenarios. The brain treats imagined experiences remarkably similarly to real ones. Neuroscience shows that imagining an action activates many of the same brain regions as performing it. Athletes who mentally rehearse a performance often show real improvements in ability. People with phobias can experience physical symptoms from imagined triggers. You can laugh, cry, or blush from a scene that plays out entirely in your head. In some cases, the imagined becomes indistinguishable from the experienced. So if your brain responds to imagination with real emotion, real physiological changes, real memories, what exactly separates the imagined from the real? In many cases, only context. Now let's go even deeper, into altered states of consciousness. These include trance, meditation, hypnosis, sensory deprivation, and the effects of certain substances. In these states, people often report profound shifts in perception. Time can stretch or vanish. The boundary between self and world may dissolve. Inner visions become more vivid than waking life. The sense of I can disappear entirely. In some cases, people report experiences of unity, timelessness, or contact with something they interpret as higher intelligence. Whether these experiences are neural hallucinations or windows into deeper layers of reality is still debated. But what matters is this. During these states, people feel more real than in everyday life. The illusion of separateness fades, and something else, something indescribable, takes its place. This suggests that what you consider normal waking reality is just one mode of consciousness, and perhaps not the most accurate one. What if the clarity you feel in an altered state is not delusion, but insight? What if the boundaries you normally accept, between self and other, between mind and world, between real and imagined, are themselves part of the illusion? Modern science is just beginning to study these states systematically. Brain scans show altered patterns of connectivity, reduced activity in the default mode network, and increased global integration. In simpler terms, the usual filters that structure reality may relax, allowing different aspects of consciousness to emerge. But it's not just about dreams and trance. Every time you imagine the future, remember the past, or fantasize about what could be, you are leaving the immediate present and stepping into a virtual world. And these inner worlds affect your choices, moods, and behaviors. They are not merely escapes, they are part of your lived experience. So where does that leave us? With the understanding that reality is not just what happens outside you, it's what happens within you, and that includes dreams, imagination, and altered perception. The mind doesn't distinguish as sharply as you might think between outer world and inner world. What matters is coherence, meaning, and emotional impact. And this brings us back to the core idea of this journey. Reality is constructed. It is built moment by moment from sensation, memory, belief, culture, technology, language, and imagination. And each of these layers can be shaped, manipulated, or distorted. That doesn't mean that nothing is real. It means that what feels real is always subject to the workings of consciousness. The illusion is not that the world doesn't exist. The illusion is that you see it clearly. In the next part, we'll examine the scientific and philosophical attempt to define what reality is. Is it information? Is it matter? Is it math? We'll dive into theories of everything, from string theory to simulation theory, and ask whether it's even possible to find the truth behind the illusion. Now that we've examined how your mind, culture, and technology shape the illusion of reality, it's time to ask a deeper question, one that science and philosophy have both wrestled with for centuries. What is reality actually made of? You've likely heard of matter, atoms, particles, energy. But when we investigate more closely, even these building blocks of the universe start to dissolve under scrutiny. Let's start with classical physics. In Newton's view, the universe was like a giant machine. Everything followed predictable rules. Time and space were absolute. Objects moved according to fixed laws. Reality in this model was stable, mechanical, and objective. But that view began to collapse in the early 20th century. Einstein came along with relativity, showing that time and space are not fixed, but relative, warped by motion and gravity. Then came quantum mechanics, and things got even stranger. Now, particles didn't have precise locations until measured. They could exist in superpositions and tangled with other particles across vast distances. Reality became probabilistic, not deterministic. The simple, mechanical model of the universe gave way to one filled with uncertainty and paradox. So scientists began asking a different kind of question. If particles aren't little bits of solid matter, what are they? And the answer is, they're not really things at all. They are excitations in quantum fields. According to the standard model of particle physics, all fundamental particles, electrons, quarks, photons, are actually just vibrations in underlying fields that extend through all of space. Each type of particle is associated with a specific field, and when that field vibrates at a particular point, a particle appears. What you think of as a thing is really a localized ripple in a sea of invisible energy. This means that everything you see, touch, and interact with is a configuration of fields. It's not made of hard stuff, it's made of interactions, forces, waves, probabilities. But we can go even deeper. Some scientists and theorists propose that information is the true foundation of reality. In this view, the universe is not made of matter or energy, but of bits, units of information. Just as a digital image is made of pixels and code, the physical universe may emerge from the processing of information at the most fundamental level. This idea is often referred to as digital physics or it-from-bit theory, famously proposed by physicist John Archibald Wheeler. He suggested that the universe is built from binary choices, yes, no, on, off, and that what we perceive as particles or space-time arises from the resolution of these informational events. In this framework, reality becomes something more like a program, a vast, evolving computation, which leads us to simulation theory. Nick Bostrom, a philosopher at Oxford, proposed that if any sufficiently advanced civilization could simulate consciousness, and if they were interested in running many simulations, then statistically, it's more likely that we are in one of those simulations than in the one original base reality. In other words, what you experience as the universe may be a form of code running on some far future computer. Time, space, matter, everything could be a high-resolution simulation. This idea sounds wild, but it's taken seriously by many scientists and technologists. Elon Musk has famously said he believes the odds we're not in a simulation are 1 in billions. Physicists have even searched for signs of underlying grid-like structure in space, or computational limits in physical processes, though no definitive evidence has yet been found. Even if we're not in a simulation, it's becoming harder to deny that reality behaves like information. Black holes, for example, challenge everything we thought we knew about physics. When an object falls into a black hole, its information, the data that describes it, seems to vanish. But quantum theory says information can never truly be destroyed. This contradiction has led to major advances in our understanding of space-time, suggesting that the surface of a black hole may actually encode everything inside it. This leads to the holographic principle. The idea here is that all the information contained in a volume of space can be described by data encoded on its boundary, just like a hologram. In other words, the three-dimensional world you experience may be a projection from a two-dimensional informational structure. This isn't science fiction, it's a serious theory in physics, supported by string theory and black hole thermodynamics. So let's recap. We began with objects, solid, separate, stable. Then we found that those objects are made of atoms, which are mostly empty space. Then we saw that atoms are made of particles, which are really just ripples in quantum fields. Those fields, in turn, may emerge from information, and that information might exist on the boundary of the universe, or or be part of a massive simulation. At every level, solidity gives way to process. Object gives way to relationship. Reality becomes a shifting, dynamic flow, not a static thing, but an event in motion. Even time, which you experience so directly, may not be what it seems. Einstein showed that time is relative, that it passes differently depending on speed and gravity. But newer theories suggest that time itself may be emergent. It may not exist at the deepest levels of physics. Some theories, like Julian Barber's timeless physics or Carlo Rovelli's loop quantum gravity, suggest that the flow of time is an illusion, an artifact of how we observe change. So if time, space, matter, and self are all fluid, contextual, or informational, what is left? Some physicists say math. The universe, in this view, is not just described by mathematics, it is mathematics. Structures, patterns, relationships. Reality in this model is the unfolding of mathematical truths through informational processes. Consciousness, identity, experience. These emerge from a deep, underlying structure of logic and possibility. It's a bold idea, but it echoes ancient beliefs too. Pythagoras saw number as the foundation of all things. The Hindu tradition speaks of the world as Maya, illusion. Buddhism teaches that the self is not fixed and reality is empty of inherent existence. Mystics throughout history have described the world as a veil, hiding a deeper, formless truth. And now, cutting-edge science is saying something eerily similar. Maybe reality is not something out there to be discovered, but something in here, to be assembled, experienced, and interpreted. Maybe there is no single truth to find, only layers, levels, dimensions, and stories. So where does this leave you? It leaves you in a position of awe and responsibility. Because if reality is not fixed, but fluid, not absolute, but relational, not discovered, but created, then your perception matters more than you realize. You are not a passive observer, you are a co-creator. We've come a long way. From the senses that interpret light and sound, to the neurons that craft belief, to the cultural stories that give shape to meaning, to the quantum fields and information patterns that may underpin all of it. We've peeled back layer after layer of what we call reality. And what we've found, over and over again, is this. Reality is not what it seems. It is not solid, fixed, or objective in the way we might assume. Instead, it is filtered, constructed, interpreted, and, in many ways, imagined. The world you live in is assembled by your brain, shaped by your culture, distorted by your memories, and colored by your beliefs. Even time, space, and matter may not be fundamental, but emergent. Yet for all its mystery, all its illusion, the experience of reality is incredibly convincing. You wake up each morning and step into a world that feels coherent and continuous. You remember who you are, you act with intention, you pursue goals, you fall in love, you suffer, you dream, you imagine. And that is where the illusion becomes not a deception, but a story. Because illusion doesn't mean false, it means something more subtle, more poetic. An illusion is a way of seeing, a frame, a perspective. It's the movie projected on the screen, the painting on the canvas, the experience crafted from sensation and meaning. It may not be the whole truth, but it is a truth, and it's the one you live. Now let's bring it home. Think about sleep. When you drift off into dreams, the world as you know it vanishes. The boundaries dissolve. The self you defend and the identity you carry both soften. And in that dreamscape, anything can happen. You might fly, you might meet someone long gone, you might visit places that never existed. And while you're in it, it's real. You don't question it, you simply experience. Then you wake up, the dream fades. You call it not real. But what if waking life is just a more persistent dream? Not unreal, not meaningless, but crafted from patterns, symbols, memory, emotion, perception. What if the waking world is just another layer of consciousness, no more or less true than the dream, but embedded in a wider field of awareness? This is not just philosophy, it's neuroscience, it's quantum physics, it's psychology and cultural studies, it's information theory and thermodynamics and mathematics. It's everything converging on one simple idea. Reality is not outside you. Reality is through you. The way you see the world is the world for you. The way you interpret experience becomes the shape of your life. The narrative you tell yourself becomes the meaning you give to everything. And that means you have power. Not the power to bend the laws of physics at will, but the power to see differently, to question, to reframe, to challenge the assumptions handed down to you, to look at the story of your life and say, is this the only version I can live? You can't always change the world, but you can change how you experience it. You can shift your awareness. You can loosen your grip on certainty. You can move from fear to curiosity, from judgment to wonder. Because behind all the illusions, behind the senses, the culture, the thoughts, the stories, there is awareness. Not a belief, not an opinion, but the simple fact of being aware. That is the most real thing you have ever known. And that awareness is the one thing that remains constant even as the world shifts and swirls around you. And so we come to the final illusion, the illusion of separation. You are not separate from the world. You are not a self watching the universe unfold. You are in it. You are made of the same atoms as the stars, the same fields as the galaxies, the same patterns as the tides and trees. The breath in your lungs was once in the lungs of others. The thoughts you think arise from language, from others, from experience you didn't create. Even your identity is relational, shaped by those you love, those who hurt you, those who taught you. The boundaries of you are fluid, porous, connected, and yet, because you are conscious, you are also unique. You are a singular perspective, never repeated, never duplicated. A node in the vast web of being. And that makes your experience of the world precious. Not because it's objectively true, but because it is subjectively alive. So where do you go from here? Maybe you begin to notice, to question, to soften your grip on what you think is real, and open your hands to what is possible. Maybe you become more curious, more compassionate, more playful. Maybe you stop mistaking the map for the territory, the belief for the truth, the mask for the face. Because the world is not what it seems, but it's not less than you thought. It's more mysterious, more flexible, more alive. And in seeing through the illusion, you don't lose the world, you gain it. In seeing that nothing is fixed, you realize everything can change. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the illusion of reality. Sleep well, dream deeply, and may you wake with new eyes.